Hey now, how is everybody doing? Welcome to Red Alert Diaries with Tanya E. Hood. I am Tanya E. Hood, a wife, a mother, and an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, it simply means I've worn a lot of different hats in my life that have helped me develop a full range of strategies and actionable steps that I've used to help my clients make a strategic impact, both personally and professionally, to have better than what life has been giving them. Red Alert Diaries is based on the life lessons from my premier book, Red Alert. Is he the one? The pocket guide defining the love of your life. Now, if you read my book, you already know that I got married at 21. And after 11 years of marriage, I found myself going through a divorce, having to raise my two sons alone. To reset my life and survive my divorce, I took the time I needed to get to know me better, which opened me up to new love again. So now I'm in a new marriage with the love of my life and my best friend, which just proves there is life after divorce. On this podcast, we have conversations that's real talk, marriage, divorce, money, and legacy. I want you to join me on the journey. Call 240-532-2227. That's 240-532-2227. Because today we have a special guest joining us, Mr. Martin Salama. Hey, Martin, welcome. Glad that you are here. Now, before we begin, I have got to introduce him to all of you. Martin is known as the architect of the Warrior's Life Code, where life stands for live incredibly full every day. He specializes in helping people frustrated in their life quickly shift their mindset to uncover their greatness so they can live their true potential and enjoy life. Martin is a native of Brooklyn, New York, and the author of 4 Steps to Uncover Your Frustrations and Improve Your Mood. Martin, thank you so much for being here. Glad that you are joining us. You would like to share a little bit more with our audience about you?
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Tanya. And wow, so great to hear your story. And we have so many things that are similar about our personal stories, going through divorce, coming out the other side stronger to find our life mate, our soulmates, really. I'm in that same boat. And I'll tell you how I got to that. How's that?
That'll be great. I'm glad that you're going to share that insight with us. So, want to let people know really quick as you share your story, please also share what inspires you.
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'll share that as we go along, if that's okay. Because really what inspires me is watching people live incredibly full every day and taking my message and putting it into their lives and recognizing they have the power within them. But let me tell you how I got there so that it makes it easier. So I'll tell you my story. So my wife and I were working on a project for about 4 or 5 years to build a multi-million-dollar health club and tennis center down by the Jersey Shore. And it took us a long time because we were waiting for the approvals from the city, from the state, to get everything in place, get the right piece of land and all that. So here we are, we finally get all the approvals, and it's the summer of 2008. We go to the bank, we're like, guys, we've put in so much money already, millions of dollars for this day. Now we're ready to start building. Can we have a loan? And they're like, yeah, sorry. The world's about to fall apart. And a month later, I said, what are you talking about? They go, you'll see. A month later, the financial world fell apart thanks to the subprimes, thanks to Bernie Madoff, thanks to everything else that went on. And overnight, we lost every penny in our lives. Everything. We were dacked, and this was a new thing for me. As much as I've had successes and failures in my life, I never was at this point. It kind of pretty much put me into a depression overnight because I'd been working on this project for 5 years. And just like that, it was gone. Took me a while to get out of this funk and say, okay, what am I going to do next? And about a year or so later, after coming through this depression, which was like a situational depression because it was obvious why I felt that way, coming through the other side and saying, okay, I got to figure out what I'm going to do with the rest of my life. I think I want to reinvent myself. I want to become a life coach because I had had life coaches in the past and I had always been involved in community events. And as a leader, people were always coming to me advice and literally coaching. So I said, okay, that's what I'm going to do. and I decided to take a course, become certified. And just around the same time, it was my 24th wedding anniversary. And on the day of our anniversary, my wife gave me a very interesting gift. She said, I want a divorce. I was like, oh boy. I'm thinking to myself, did you put a bow on that as well? Because thanks so much for knocking me down, you know? And I was really in a bad place. I was angry, depressed. I couldn't believe it. Here I was figuring out how to put my life back together again. And the woman that I was married to for 24 years said, I'm done.
So
I was
let's
like,
pause
okay.
right there because that is a lot of information. I remember going through the same thing because I was a real estate investor. Now, for me, because of the strategy that I use, I didn't have a major problem when the housing market crashed. But going through that element that you were talking about, having your spouse just automatically show up and dismantle the relationship that you all have built for years, that devastation. I understand that that's part of what brings you through the process because for lots of us, when we go through a traumatic experience, we often build a plan and a strategy to help others get through it. So I see part of why you came to be a life coach. But what were you giving others to get through that space? What did you start sharing?
So what happened was, and the universe, God, however you want to put it, was sending me a message telling me, you know what, you're going through life coaching to help you get through your divorce. And going through the coaching, the training, made me look deep within myself and recognize what I had contributed positively and negatively to the marriage. And I realized that I took everything personally. I was a control freak. I had to know everything that was going on. And as a result, everything would set me off very quickly. I had a very short temper if everything wasn't going the way I thought it should go, to the point that I reacted to everything. If you ask my kids, they'd even tell you I was like a nuclear reactor, where I left fallout all over and I would apologize, kind of like one of those, I'm sorry, but type of things, which is not
We have
really an
got to stop
apology.
there because that behavior is what a lot of people don't do enough of self-reflecting. So one, I commend you for going through the self-reflection. Unfortunately, like a lot of us, I did an autopsy of what took place in our marriage once I got divorced. And that is where
Right.
I discovered some things. So for individuals, like I said, are kind of entrepreneur driven mindset individuals, wanting to be in control is kind of how we function. But we got to be clear about how we truly show up. What did you do? Because in this discussion point, we want to give people something that they can recognize. And since you
Yeah,
spoke about those red flags for all of you that have been listening, yes, he was a walking red flag.
that's right. So
How do you recognize that and get out of it?
so I'll tell you what happened. I was recommended a bunch of books when I started the coaching program. And one of them was called The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Have you read that book? Yeah. So the minute I read Don't Take Anything Personally, it was as if somebody, this man, had just told me the secret that everybody's been telling me my entire life. But until that moment, I wasn't ready to hear it. And I was like, oh my God, what would happen if I didn't take everything personally? And just like that, I was like, oh, that's why I'm a people pleaser. That's why I'm a control freak, because I take everything personally. And when things don't go my way, I lose it to the point of being a nuclear reactor. So that was a turning point for me, going through life coaching and reading that and saying, imagine if I just let things happen instead of trying to be in control. Because one of the things I was as a parent was one of those helicopter smothering parents who never wanted to make sure that always wanted to make sure that my children never had a problem. You know, those parents who they want to make sure the kids never fall. I realize now they need to fall. They need to fail.
That's the part that not enough people pay attention to. See, when our children are younger and they're beginning to walk, they fall all the time. It is in the falling that they learn that they must get back up. And then something happens in some brains where we discover we don't want them to do that ever again. That's how they got to be able to move to begin with. So you just shared a couple more things. You are just walking through all of the things I share with my clients about what to look for to give yourself standards, boundaries, and put expectations to keep you whole. Being a
Right.
people pleaser is one of the things that often breaks those that are in a marriage, and you find it difficult to get out of it because
Yeah.
you enter into that relationship seeking validation from that person when all along you should have been seeking clarity of who you are at the core of your being. So I share that with my clients to get them to their best position. What do you share with your clients? Because with you having such magnitude insight, with having lived through what a lot of things that I have had to talk to, because I've been pieces of it, but not
Right.
to this degree. So how do you give that
Right.
insight? What do you share with your clients?
So when I finished coaching, coaching program, I realized that it was the coaching that helped me get through my marriage, get through my divorce. And I decided to write a book and I called it Recovering from Divorce: 7 Steps to Recover so that you could live the life you're looking to live. Something like that. I don't remember the exact name because it's about 8 or 9 years ago, but it's called Recovering from Divorce: 7 Steps to Recover. And the recover are my 7 steps acronym to recovering. Okay. And I sold them. I know what you're feeling because I'm feeling the same thing. I was feeling the same thing. So you need to first look back and recognize what was serving you and what wasn't. And I'll be honest, I'd like to, in the beginning, when she first told me about the divorce, I was like, it's all my fault because that's me being a people pleaser. As I started to go through this, I realized, you know what? We both were at fault and we were both victims. And I could only take responsibility for what I did wrong. And I could only embrace what the victim was and let go of it so that I can grow. And the reason I say embrace it is because recognizing that it happened is only half of the battle. Because most people could get stuck down there and say, okay, I'm the victim, woe is me. But I said, now I got to fix it and turn it around. And that's how I approach it with my clients, saying, we look at the back, we admit the issues, then we move forward and we start to figure out how to make it work for us.
And that's good to know because too often I find people that want to take on the total blame. It takes two people to start a relationship, and it also takes two people to end the relationship. Now,
That's right.
for those of you that are listening, I'm aware that some of you may be saying, but if they're not trying, then there's nothing I can possibly do. There is still an element, regardless of what happens around you, that you have control. There's a statement that my grandmother used to tell me that didn't make a lot of sense when I was younger, but isn't it amazing how stuff you still learn? Finally, you hear them after all these years. She would tell me all the time, Tanya, you're the pebble. Tanya, you're the pebble. And I'm like, Grandma, what does that mean? The whole story behind that was when you throw a pebble into a pond, it makes a ripple. I am the pebble because anytime I make an adjustment in whatever element of my life, there will be a ripple effect around me. If the other person is not participating, it's okay because the change that you make within yourself will give a ripple effect that can help you, one, get emotionally whole. So I'm glad that you took the time to get to emotionally healing that you need, but you
Yeah.
also share part of that with your clients. Do you talk a little bit more about you walking through the emotional health of your clients?
Yeah. So the emotional health is such a big part of it because I don't want them to get wallowing in there. It's okay to reflect on it and say, this is where it got me. Okay. But it doesn't have to keep me here. And now it's up to me to move forward. And me as a coach, I'm telling the clients, I'm asking the clients the questions. What do you want to do now? Where do you want to go? Do you want to stay stuck in the pit of doom, in the pit, and have your own pity party? Or do you want to climb out and become what now I call become a warrior? A warrior is somebody who has faced adversity and come out the other side stronger. So that's what I tell them. Now, my coaching has developed to now I call myself, as you said, the architect of the warrior's life code. And that came from after a few years of doing divorce coaching. I looked in the mirror and I wasn't happy with what I saw because I wasn't preaching so much of what I was teaching. I wasn't living it.
Yeah,
I
you have
wasn't
to
living.
live those things. And that's
Right.
part of what makes individuals like you and I, who actually lived our story and share it with others. Talk a little bit more about what the life code actually is for those that aren't
Okay.
aware.
Absolutely. So I had this epiphany one day that I'm at the heaviest I ever was in my life and I got to do something about it. And at that moment, I started eating better. I started exercising. I started reading better books, more of those better books, listening to positive lectures, talks, whatever. And within 10 months, I lost 65 pounds. And with that came a better self-esteem, self-worth, up to the point that I was ready to start dating. So I started dating. And one of the things I was doing also was I was meditating. I was never very good at it because I'm like a little ADD, little ADHD actually. And I had this download one time of all this information saying, I'm loving my life. I want to show other people how to love their life. And out of that came life. Live incredibly full every day. And that's where I started to build that. Now, in this interim, I started dating somebody. And within a month, I turned to her and I said, I have to tell you something. And I don't need to hear it back from you, but I want to tell you, I'm in love with you because you have the values I'm looking for. I love you because I love who you are and who I see in me as a result of being with you. You don't have to tell me. But 2 weeks later, she came back to me and she said, I love you too. 2 years later, we got married and we've been married for almost 4 years now.
So let's pause there because that is awesome. Here's something that some people may be thinking that's really fast. But here's what they don't probably pay enough attention to. You did some work. When you do work on yourself, get clear about your boundaries and standards and know who you are, it happens like that because you
Yeah.
start attracting the people that fit what you have created as a standard. For my husband and I, when we met each other, we were friends. And we were friends for several years because I was not looking for anybody. I had determined after my divorce, I wasn't doing this again. That was my stand. I was done.
I did
we,
that. I've
we will
been
not
there, done
repeat
that.
this. But as I started getting more clear about Tanya and really tapping into who I was, I opened myself up to the possibility of being in a relationship again. When I made that decision, like you said, it sort of clicked. The
Right.
universe decided, oh, that's where you want to be now. Let's
Yeah,
open up some doors for you. What
exactly
God does
right.
for us is present our mate. God does not give us the mate. You
No,
always get to choose.
that's
And
true.
when I finally opened up my eyes, my husband laughs when we tell this story. So if you ever talk to Eric, you're going to get a different version. But this is
This
the
is
true
your
part
version.
of it. We were working in the same profession, and he was my mentor. So, for those of you that have the book, yes, my current husband, Eric, is the mentor in the book. We were
Fantastic.
having a discussion after a meeting one day, and I don't know what it was. It seemed like for the first time, he really smelled good. He laughed at me. He was like, I always smell good. I don't know what was wrong with your nose. But
That's
soon
great.
thereafter, I started seeing him different, recognizing
Right.
different things. And
Right.
then we started dating several months after that. But 2 years later, we got married. And for us now, it's been 11 years.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I just want to go over something with you.
Uh-huh.
She wasn't the first person I dated. I dated other women, dozens maybe, and one or two of them even went beyond 2 or 3 dates. Okay,
Okay. I didn't
but
do a whole lot of dating pre-marriage with the first
right,
one, and I didn't do a whole lot of dating after. There was a few, but
yeah,
that was not
yeah,
my
yeah,
thing.
yeah. I get it. But for me, when I would go on these dates now,
Mhm.
they didn't know they were being interviewed of their values to see how our values could connect. Because I realized in the first marriage, after going through life coaching, that my values and my first wife's values were never the same. And maybe we never should have gotten married in the first place. Not that I regret it, because I have 4 children and 8 gorgeous, wonderful grandchildren. Okay. And I wouldn't trade them for anything in the world. But, if I would have listened to the voices back in my 20s, who knows? We may not have gotten married, but we had many good years. But my point is that because our values were not aligned, and I talk about this in my recovering from divorce book, I loved her more than she loved me. And as a result, I learned the one that loves less has the power in the marriage. because the one that one loves more is trying to get them to love them more. So they'll do anything they need to try to get the other one to love more. And it was a codependent relationship. So dating, I learned through coaching, they're going to get interviewed the first couple of times we go out, whether they recognize it or not. And this woman was checking the boxes, baby. I was like, oh my God, this is really God. You've sent me the woman with the checklist already checked out.
Here's the thing about a list. So there are several people that think about lists. Now, granted, I want to share this. I had a list as well. But what I was walking through for me, and for those of you that have the book, this is what's written in chapter 3. God had put me on a personal journey to get myself whole, because you cannot keep walking around with the wounds of your past. It will adversely affect your future and have the worst thoughts that you will imagine in your present. So God had to heal me up. But the way he did it was letting me know, you don't know what you're looking for. So let's take some time to do a quick study. So God gave me 2 scriptures, 1 Timothy chapter 3, verses 1 through 10, and Isaiah chapter 32, verses 1 through 8. In those 2 scriptures, God gave me an understanding of what to look for, because I am a daddyless daughter. I didn't have a father to give me insight about what it looked like. And for those individuals that are similar to me, you'll either pick a man that mirrors all the men that you grew up with, or the exact opposite. But if any of those men were not an appropriate model for you, you'll still pick wrong. So I did.
That's true. That's true. And you know what? Something I talk to my clients, my divorce clients about, is if you don't do the work on yourself, you'll find out that the statistics of second marriages is 2/3 of them end up in divorce.
So
why?
true.
Because you think it's all the other person's fault and you didn't have to change. Hello?
That's the problem that a
You
lot
gotta
of people
change.
have. But here's another part of that. I wanted to be mindful so that it's clear. If some individuals feel that they were in such an abusive relationship, a lot of it is just you being clear about who you are. When my divorce ended, I lost Tanya. I didn't know something as basic as my favorite ice cream or dessert, because I stopped eating my favorite fruit because he was allergic to it.
Right.
And so I no longer knew some basic elements. Sometimes those individuals have to just get clear about the basics of who you are and decide that it's lovable.
100%. You know, it made me think of something. When I started dating my current wife, after a few dates, I started telling her things like, you're a wonderful person. She said, I can't hear that. Too long, I went with somebody else telling me I was a piece of garbage, that I believed that I was a piece of garbage. Well, I told her, get used to it, because I'm going to say it a lot to you, that you are a wonderful person. So that was a huge turning point for her, recognizing that she wasn't a piece of garbage. And it was okay to come out from under that shadow, under that hood that she was living under.
And sometimes it requires someone else to help pour into you, because I know with my husband now, I had done some decent work on myself, recovering from what took place, letting the negative voices of my ex still speak to me. I had finally gotten past a lot of those. But what I discovered was a lot of what he was sharing were things I brought into that first marriage that had nothing to do with him. The images and the statements that people made about me, about I wasn't good enough or this, that, and the other. And then I allowed my ex to reinforce the negative parts that I'd already been exposed to, not realizing that was the foundation that I had to build, create a firmer stance so I can be whole. And then with my current husband, because he was sure of who he was from the top of his head to the soles of his feet, when you are confident, you can see elements in others and encourage them and empower them. And that's part of what you were sharing before, giving some insight about how to know the difference between emotions and feelings. Do you want to share a little bit more about that?
I would. And so that's something that's very, very important to me. So part of the talk that we're going to talk about now is building your emotional strength. And this came out of my own personal work of recognizing that I easily allowed my emotions to take over without recognizing there's a difference between emotions and feelings. Okay. And so, for example, an emotion is something that happens right from, it comes from the external world matters. And a feeling is your emotions matter. Okay, there's a big difference. Emotions tells us what we like and dislike, and feelings tell us how to live. Emotions state there are good and bad actions, and feelings there is a right and wrong way to be. Emotions establish our initial attitude towards reality, and feelings establish our long-term attitude towards reality. There's a difference, and it's important to know those differences. So what I talk about in this talk is breaking those down. For example, emotions are things like joy, fear, enthusiasm. Feelings are happiness, worry, contentment. So it's that immediate emotion. Okay, now what do I do with it? Most people just allow the emotion to run away. What I say is build your emotional strength by recognizing what your emotion is and then figuring out what the feeling that's going with that.
Well, all right. So does this feed into the course that you have? Can you tell us
Right,
more
it
about
does.
that?
It does. So one of the things that I do in my course, which is, excuse my New York accent, is called Go from Worrier to Warrior. So it's a worrier to warrior coaching course. Stop being worried and become a warrior. Okay. And that came out of I built my life coaching program, the ideas of my life, what I wanted to do with Live Incredibly Full every day. Then comes 2020 and the world's freaking out. Everybody's worried about what's going on with COVID. And I'm looking at myself, I'm looking at my wife, and I'm like, why are we not worried? Why is everybody worried and we're not? And I realized the last 10, 12 years had prepared me for anything. So I got into Facebook and I told people, how'd you like to go from being worried to being a warrior? And out of that came the Warrior's Life Code. And what I do in the course is teach things like building your emotional strength, the 4 simple steps to keep your feelings from ruling your actions.
That is so good. And I thank you for sharing that insight. But you also told me, based off of all the things that you've done, that you have a special gift to give to my
I,
audience.
I do. And what it is a full webinar going through building your emotional strength that they can watch at their own time. Along with that, they're going to get a sheet that explains emotions and feelings and how to put it together. And with that, they'll also get a worksheet on how to understand it and go through the 4 steps. I'm going to go through them real quick just to give you a quick understanding. So it's L, I use life again. Listen to your inner voice and acknowledge your feelings. I, identify what those feelings are with that chart. F, find out why. Question your feelings. Literally get in there and cross-examine like you're on trial. And then E, engage in change and take action. And it'll go further into each one of these on this webinar, and you'll have those sheets as well to help you. And also, I'm also giving them, once they do that, they can sign up for a free 30-minute breakthrough conversation with me.
Well, that is awesome. Thank you so much, Martin, for that. So for those of you that are listening, I will be providing that information in the comments below. And so I appreciate you giving us, Martin. Is there any final thoughts that you want to leave with the audience today?
Yes. And if you've taken anything out of anything I've said today, it's I want you to consider this. Don't take anything personally. It's about what's going on in their life, not what's going on in your life. And it's about you deciding whether it's going to affect you or not.
So everyone, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, Martin, for sharing that. It is people like you that empower individuals, and we need you to continue to doing that. So everyone, go to Martin's website, warriorslifecode.com. There you can get a copy of his book and reach out to him for more things that he has to offer. So for today, if you don't remember anything else that has been shared with you, here's the one thing I want you to know. You can get the strength that you need and support along the way from individuals like Martin or myself, where there are coaches that can help you change your mindset to get to your best position, and specifically to change from being a worrier to a warrior reach out to Martin. And for those of you that are on Clubhouse, we can continue the conversation in the Winning and Wealth Club in the Red Alert Diaries room starting at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. There, I look forward to continuing the conversation, or we can start a new one. This is Tanya E. Hood, walking in my purpose, and I want you to do the same.